I'm Dominik Havsteen-Franklin. I'm a professor in practice at Brunel University, and I'm also a consultant in art therapies for the National Health Service in the UK. My background in research has mostly been around developing arts-based interventions, particularly in mental health contexts, but growing into sort of different kinds of contexts too. So, for example, thinking about we did a very nice psychosocial arts-based study in South Africa, looking at how NPOs were sort of employing different arts modalities to work with communities on quite large scales. That was sort of born out of my research in healthcare, which was more or less following sort of medical sort of research council kind of procedures and so forth. So I'm sort of bridging two research domains. One is sort of health and the kind of medical world, and the other one is very much kind of arts-based and thinking much more about the kind of community context. So I'm that sort of person that tries to bridge both languages, really, both ways of thinking, both paradigms, both discourses, and sort of where we meet somewhere in the middle to create something that's quite innovative. I think the challenging part is that usually, because I work a lot with art therapists, so art therapists, music therapists, drama, dance movement, and they come with a real authenticity, which is about how they move relationally through the arts. And there's a kind of beauty to that, there's an unspoken beauty to that. But if you're going to speak to a commissioner about this unspoken beauty, then they're expecting a different kind of language, you know? So they want to know about numbers and the way it's packaged and how many people it'll meet and how it meets particular medical outcomes. So my job is to kind of let them know the stories of patients, about how they engage, what it means to them. The kind of importance of accessibility, for example, but in a language they understand. To say, yeah, okay, we've got the stories here, but actually it has a big impact. In the health world and health concerns that you have, we can definitely meet some of those around anxiety, depression, psychoses. So that's the challenges are always about sort of languages and philosophies. I guess the other part of this is that some of the most, to my mind, profound knowledges come from those populations in the UK which have been somewhat sort of marginalised. So we're thinking about very poor communities or people with different ethnic origins that might feel outside of sort of dominant society and wouldn't normally access kind of health services. So how do we bring them on board in a way that makes sense to them? I think one of the main things is to listen to where they're at, where they're coming from, and often arts is a big part of that. So we're not saying that words and speaking isn't important, we think it really is, but it's about making this connection with this sort of sometimes lost language, so you see, I watch my children like with making images and dancing and singing, and they're all just beautiful languages. And sometimes I think as we get older, we can lose touch with those languages within ourselves, and they often have quite sort of healing, powerful properties in their own right when you find that connection and aesthetic which belongs to you. So we really support people to do that, and the other part of this, I guess, is about relationships. We're interested in how people relate to other people, their environments, the wider context, and through the arts, somewhere that begins to make broader bridges, to help people to navigate some complex social areas, for example. Somehow, embodying this in an image or sound or a dramatic movement gives a life and vitality that you can work with in quite a almost physical way. So you can reshape this together with the therapists, rethink about what potentials and possibilities there are, so you can see an emergent future rather than something that felt very limited and restricted previously. So I would say those are some of the sort of fundamental benefits in mental health contexts. I mean, at the moment in the UK, there's a lot of movement around trying to embody patient experience. So bringing that in board in a sort of more qualitative experiential sense. So how do we make sense of people's experiences in healthcare? and really listening very closely to what they're asking, what they need, and so forth. This is the movement, but the NHS employs 1 million people. It's a very big sort of vehicle, and it moves at such a slow rate. It's like this sort of tanker you're sort of turning. So whilst there is a very strong shift towards integration and more closer contact with tertiary and community services, and having a much more integrated approach to care, it's a slow development. I've got to say, the arts therapies, which is what I'm mostly sort of concerned with, has been steadily growing, and as recently we're employing more than ever before. So there's been significant growth in the last sort of 4 to 5 years. Really sort of since the pandemic, we can say. We've seen this gradual growth, and now we're seeing something kind of, really beginning to take shape as a kind of respected, important, sort of valued treatment option, a sort of health option. So it's nice to see, at least in this domain, the arts beginning to have more presence, validity, and of course research supporting that.